Let's look at 20 must-haves that we need to stock up on before the upcoming chaos. So we can all see that violence and crime has risen over the last couple of years, and it just continues to get worse and worse. And with everything going on in this world, we really need to be prepared. I think it is just so important to make sure we have the things we need. I can see chaos on the horizon. I'm sure we all can see that. If you just look around at the things going on in your area, I know we live pretty far out from cities. We don't have a huge population. We live in a very small town, but we still are seeing an uptick in crime, domestic crime, thieves, everything, breaking into cars, breaking into homes, all sorts of stuff, violence, everything. It just continues to rise, and it's only going to get worse. I think we're really going to see an uptick over the next few months into next year, because things are just getting crazier and crazier. Between the mental health of our country and the crazy laws that are being implemented, I think it is so important to be prepared. So I've just put together this small list of 20 must-have items that I think we all should have in stock in our pantries to make sure we've got what we need for our families. Aside from being able to protect ourselves, our supplies, our families, our home, that is definitely a must. We need to be prepared to do that, making sure our home is completely secure to protect our families and our supplies. So let's jump in and check out 20 must-have items that we need to stock up on before the upcoming chaos. So the first thing on my list is pantry staples. I think they are so important, making sure you've got those dry goods, baking supplies, spices, all of those things that you use on a day-to-day basis, and things that you don't use on a day-to-day basis, because you may have to make sure that you can make your own breads and foods and things like that if you normally eat out all the time. During chaos and crazy times, especially this economy, most people can't afford to eat out. And, you know, when that's all that you normally do, you want to make sure you've got the stuff so when you can't. The second thing on my list is canned and frozen meats. I think those are so important. Any of your proteins, things that you are going to use to get that protein in. Not everybody eats meat, I understand that, but it is so important to make sure you've got a good supply of proteins in your home and you've got that ready to go when you need them. Number 3 on my list is fats and oils. Fats and oils are so important in our diets. A lot of people think fats are horrible for you, but there are lots of good things in fats that we need. Either animal fats or, you know, your cooking oils and things like that. They are really important. Not only do we need them in our bodies, they also make our food taste a lot better. Number 4 on my list is medications. We want to make sure we've got everything we need, whether it's your prescription drugs, over-the-counter stuff, or your medicines that you're making yourself. Having all those supplies so you can do that is really important. Number 5 on my list is seeds. We need to have seeds in our pantry. If we have a long-term situation, we are going to have to be able to grow food. And a lot of times you cannot grow enough food for everyone in your family, depending on the space that you have. Foraging is another great thing that I think everybody should have under their belt. It's just a wonderful skill so you can collect food when you see it. Number 6 on my list is garden tools. If you've got seeds, you're going to have garden tools to make sure that you can garden. You know, your hoes and rakes and shovels, all that stuff, making sure you've got that. Now is a great time to look for those at thrift stores, yard sales, anything like that. You can get them really inexpensive. I have even seen lots of tools at set aside at the dump that were still good and people can take from that transfer station and have at home, and it doesn't even cost anything. So keeping your eyes peeled, those curbside little goodies, you never know what you're going to find. I think it's really important. We want to make sure we've got garden tools. If we have to grow our food, we'll be able to. And number 7 on my list is lighters, matches, fair run striker. We have got to be able to light fires in an emergency situation for multiple different reasons. So we want to make sure we have the supplies to do so. Number 8 on my list is lighting. You want to make sure you have got candles, oil lamps, whatever it is that you're going to use. Both of those are not only wonderful for lighting, they're also great. They add a little bit of heat, and you are going to have the things that you need. If you're going with oil lamps, you're going to want to make sure that you've got plenty of oil and wicks to go with that. Number 9 on my list is flashlights, headlamps, batteries, all those things. I think they are super important. Your on-the-go stuff, you're not really going to walk around with an oil lantern. They are wonderful for stationary, but if you've got to go outside, you're going to want flashlights, headlamps, things like that. So you've got that portable lighting to take with you, and the batteries that work with those as well. And number 10 on my list is water filters. We are all stocking up on water, but in a long-term or really big emergency situation, water is going to go fast. It's one of your most precious things that you need. You can only go 3 days without water. We've got to make sure we've got enough, having as much water as you can in the house, but those water filters are going to pull you through in a longer term situation because you will run out of water. We just don't have enough room to store enough for a long-term situation. Number 11 is oral hygiene. Oral hygiene is so important. It can cause so many problems. Being in pain in an emergency situation is definitely not good. Making sure we have all that stuff to take care of our teeth and keep them healthy and clean is so important. If we can't get to a dentist, we don't want to be having all kinds of extra problems. So making sure we have plenty of that oral hygiene on hand, toothbrushes, toothpaste, floss, all of that stuff. Making sure we have that is super important. And number 12 on my list is your everyday hygiene, your toilet paper, soap, shampoos, things like that, whatever you're going to use, or the supplies for you to make them. If you are planning on doing family cloth or something like that, reusable cloths for toileting, you definitely want to make sure you've got those things ready. So when you run out, you're not in a panic all at the last moment to have what you need. You want to make sure you've got it all ready to go. So when that happens, it's there. And number 13 on my list is something a lot of people forget, and that's feminine hygiene and baby supplies. If you are pregnant or you know someone that's pregnant, you may want to keep some extra baby supplies around to help someone, if it's your daughter or your son's wife or whoever it is. You want to make sure you've got those things. And if you've got teenagers, there's a possibility in a long-term situation you may need some baby supplies, and a lot of them can be used for multi-purpose items. So even if you don't have babies, they're still going to be useful. Diapers are very absorbent. Cloth diapers that can double as rags and things like that. There are lots of things that we want to have on hand, but making sure we've got what we need. Feminine hygiene, again, you can make your own feminine napkins out of cloth and things like that. So making sure that you're prepared for that situation when it arises is very important. Number 14 on my list is cast iron. I think cast iron cookware is so important, especially in emergency situations. If you have to cook over an open fire, a lot of your cheaper pans are not going to hold up in a long-term situation. They may be all right for 4 or 5 cooks, but if you get that heat just a little bit too high, you can warp your pans and wreck your pans. I've seen some cheap pans just kind of melt away over a fire. If you try those thin foil pans and things like that, they will just melt if the fire is too hot. So I think it is really important to have cast iron cookware and learning how to use it beforehand, making sure that you've got it nice and hot before you put that food in so it doesn't stick is a great skill. And working on that cast iron's wonderful because it just lasts forever. It's really easy to clean up. It's pretty easy to take care of. You just want to keep it dry. You don't want to leave it soaking and too much water on it. After you wash it, dry it so it doesn't rust. Put a little oil on it. It's really easy to use, and I love cast iron over the fire, in the smoker, all over the place. We throw it on the barbecue. We use it for lots and lots of stuff. Number 15 on my list is canning and preserving supplies. If you're not a canner, a lot of times you don't have these things. But I think it's a good idea to have them because you may have to preserve any food that you grow. A lot of us cannot grow food in the winter time, or they can't grow very much. We can grow small things in the windowsill, things like that. But if you think about being without electricity in the middle of the winter, what is it that you're going to be able to grow? And are you going to need more than that to eat? I'm pretty sure you are. I mean, I can grow a few heads of lettuce in the window and some herbs, but there's not a whole lot of foods that I can grow inside that are going to sustain us. So making sure we have those canning and preserving items are super important. And not just canning, you may want to dehydrate. I use a screen for drying herbs. You can hang herbs however it is that you're going to do it. I find the screen is better for the chunkier stuff because sometimes it can mold if you're putting your bunches up and hanging them and they're too compact inside. So making sure they're spread out is important. You can use screens, you can use all sorts of stuff to air dry items. Number 16 on my list is books. I don't think you can have too many books. You want to have some how-tos, some first aid books, preserving books, cooking books, fixing things that you're not used to fixing, all sorts of things like that. Survival books are also wonderful. Making sure you've got enough books, because if there's no internet access, you can't just quickly look something up. We need to have paper, hard copies of stuff. And if you find information on the internet, you can always print it out, put it in binders, folders, whatever you want. But making sure we've got that hard copy of stuff is super important in the event that there's no electricity and no internet. And number 17 on my list is sewing supplies. I think those are super important. You don't have to be a master seamstress, but being able to fix a hole in your jeans or darn a sock, anything like that, is super handy. It doesn't matter if it's beautiful as long as it gets the job done. And number 18 on my list is tarps and plastic sheeting, things like that. Big pieces of plastic so you can cover windows, cover a generator if you're using it on a regular basis outside, cover up anything that needs to be covered, block off a room. You can hang a tarp or plastic to close off a room to help contain the heat when it is cold outside and your family is trying to stay warm. It can be very helpful to be able to do that. And number 19 is duct tape and fasteners. Another super important item we don't always think about, but making sure if we've got to hang that plastic to close off a room or cover a broken window, duct tape is wonderful. It may wreck the paint on your wall, but you know, in an emergency situation, paint is definitely not anything that I'm concerned about. And number 20 on my list is having appropriate footwear and clothing for your area. You may not need a sleeping bag or a winter jacket that needs to go down to -20, but other people may. So I think it's really important to make sure we've got appropriate clothing and footwear for all of those things when it becomes cold in the winter time, when it becomes hot in the summertime, when we're having to do a lot of extra work. If all you've got is a bunch of dress shoes, it's going to stink to have to work in those shoes outside. Making sure you've got good quality footwear is really important so you can keep going when there's a lot of work to do. And in a long-term situation, there's going to be a lot more work than you're used to doing every day. We love modern amenities, but they may not always be here for us. With everything going on in the world and our country, I think it is so important to be prepared, and we need to make sure we've got all the supplies for our family. There are lots of other things that you can put in your emergency supplies, but making sure you've got the basics is going to save you in a long-term situation or many different types of situations. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.